And welcome to In Our Generation, first episode of the new year, January 4th of 2021. We are back from the Bible school. I don't know if you can see, I got the new t-shirts we made for it, which is like an eye chart, if you can see it. And it says in Spanish, Bible School 2021. The last line is 2020. I say 2020. The last line of the eye chart, the real small letters, is the year corresponding to 2020. Each line corresponds to one of the years we've done the Bible School. This was the 7th year we've done it. Not exactly every year in a row. We moved from Christmas time to Easter, and so we ended up skipping one calendar year in order to do that, but we've done this now for 7 years, the Bible School. This was perhaps the one I enjoyed the most. And so anyways, I'm wearing my Bible School 2020 eye chart t-shirt. They are not for sale. They cannot be obtained except by attending Bible school, or if some cheater snags one for you, then you can get one. Otherwise, they are limited edition collector's items, going to be worth dozens of pennies one day. Dozens of pennies in one day. So, anyways, on to the news of this new year. All those who were hoping that the turning over of the calendar year would make some difference in the world doesn't seem to have happened. Seems like everything's just the same as it was 4 days ago. Anyways, I don't know if you saw, there was the 117th Congress opened up in Washington with the traditional prayer. I say traditional in that it is traditional for it to be opened with prayer. It certainly was not a traditional prayer. They prayed to Brahma. They prayed to other pagan gods. They wanted to include everyone in there. Obviously, the House is governed by the Democrats, and so they definitely wanted to include everybody in. Don't want anyone to feel left out in our very tolerant, open-minded society that we are. And when he ended the prayer, and this has been reported all over, but it was just so hilarious to me, the whoever it is they get to pray ends the prayer saying the traditional Amen. And then he adds, a woman. So in order to not offend the feminists that they are using the gendered word of amen, they say amen and a woman. Who in the world did they get to pray in the nation's capital? I mean, this isn't a nobody. You have to be somebody. They certainly don't invite me to pray at the nation's capital, or you, or anyone who would be so inconsequential as to ever watch this podcast would ever be invited to pray in the Congress. But you would think that anybody that significant, that important, that well-known, that worthy would certainly know that amen is not a gendered word. Regardless of your view of gendered words and the need to get rid of them and not say gendered words, you would think that anybody who would be asked to pray to initiate the congressional session of our nation would know that amen doesn't mean a man, and therefore needs to be counterbalanced with a woman. You would think for sure they would know that. I mean, you could forgive somebody for not knowing that woman is not based on the word man, because many people think it is. And you look at that, and that's one of those false friends words that seems like that would be reasonable to think, right? That they took man, and as I was explained when I was very young by very well-intentioned but completely uninformed people, that what they did is they took a womb of the woman's womb and added it to the man. It means a man with a womb. Don't ever get your information from evangelicals. Evangelical fundamentalists do not think very highly. Many of them do not think very highly of actual research. They will not put in the work for actual research. They go with their gut feeling and often get things terribly wrong, terribly wrong. But anyways, you could forgive somebody for thinking that woman comes from the root word of man. But to think that amen comes from, it means a man or something of that nature, and therefore needs to be counterbalanced the way we now say he and she, his and hers, when we're talking, which just complicates language so much. Yeah, I wish English had a gender neutral term, and not because of any misogyny or anti-misogyny. None of that. It just would. There's many times when it would be more. It would be clear for the language to have a gender neutral term to refer to a large gathering and imply or specify with a single word that we are talking about a mixed gathering for there to be no confusion, but we don't have one. And so we now have used he and him and man as our gender neutral word. And for some reason, feminists are all up in arms about this and have been for a long time and feel they're being left out. They're being left out. I don't understand that exactly, because women have the distinction that their pronouns are not being taken in vain to refer to any possible gathering. If you speak of women and a woman, you're only speaking of women and no one else. So you're not taking their pronouns in vain. I think men should be the ones that are angry, and we should protest that our pronouns would be taken in vain, that no woman should ever be worthy to be called a man. That'll offend somebody, hopefully. Anyway, so he prays, and he ends it with, Amen, a woman. And I thought about that, and I think, I think he's on to something. I think he is on to something. We need to go through the English language, and we need to correct all of this misogyny that has taken place. Now, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit that we could start off on. For instance, manslaughter. What about womanslaughter? We definitely need to add to the dictionary womanslaughter. And anytime anybody is in court and they're being tried for manslaughter, it needs to be gender neutralized. So we need to offer both. And so the indictment should read, on 3 counts of manslaughter, womanslaughter, how do you plead? So that is one that we need to fix. How about manhunt? I mean, are women not hunted? Do women want to be hunted? So we should definitely have manhunt/woman hunt. And so when we have the movie like The Fugitives, and Tommy Lee Jones is saying we need to search in every outhouse and porterhouse and in-house and country house and farmhouse, and they're doing their manhunt, he needs to say /woman hunt. What about a mannequin? I mean, most mannequins aren't even men, and yet we're calling them mannequins. I think we should be calling them womankins, right? No more mannequins. And what about managers? I mean, are we just saying, we're just building it into the language, teaching all these little girls that they can never aspire to anything more than to be waitresses. Servers. I don't know how that's better. I don't know. This is the problem with all this language police. How is server better than waitress? How is that better? I don't get that. If I had to choose, I would rather have a technical term such as a waitress or waiter applied to me over one that is somewhat demeaning in itself if you're going to look at it that way, which is you're the server, you serve. I don't know. Very strange. I don't know how waiting is worse than serving. But anyways, manager is definitely needs to be addressed. We need a woman-manager, right? We can't just have a manager. That's definitely sending the wrong teaching, the wrong ideas to our children. So we definitely need to change that. But that's all the low-hanging fruit. But there's just so many words that need to be fixed. For instance, what about something that's considered to be maneuverable? I mean, maneuverable, only man can steer. Only a man can change its direction, change its course. We definitely need to start saying it is woman-maneuverable. I mean, maybe the reason why women are such bad drivers is because cars have been made to be maneuverable and not woman-maneuverable. So we definitely need to fix that. And what about manufactured? Are we saying only men can build something? Never mind that women don't build much of anything, but can't they build something? Sure. So we definitely need to fix manufacture, and that needs to be woman manufacture. But then those are still the easy ones. But there's the ones that are truly insidious. Just they're built in, and they're truly evil, and they must be addressed. I thought about what we need to quit calling it a manicure. I mean, how demeaning for women. Women, I would assume, are 90% of the nail care customers, and every time they go, they are demeaned, they are debased, they are obliged and forced to say, I want a manicure, just so that they can constantly be reminded of the patriarchy that they're oppressed by. So we definitely need to fix that word, manicure. We need to fix the word manual. No wonder women don't read the instructions, because they don't want to be reminded of their oppression by the patriarchy when they read the manual. And what about when the manipulate? We need to fix that word. How about emancipate? We need a womancipate. That's what we should have, a womancipate. And what about the manifestation? Don't we need a woman infestation? Maybe we do have a woman infestation. Well, that's not exactly the same word, I guess. What about manners? I mean, are we saying only men are well behaved? Shouldn't we have womaners and manners and womaners? And what about manure? I mean, come on. That we are definitely depriving women of their due process and of their true value as human beings when we only label cow dung as a manure. It definitely needs to be called womanure. We need womanure. We cannot proceed any further. We cannot, in fact, all farming must cease until this has been corrected and we now have womanure instead of just manure. And what about menstruation? I mean, really? One of the few things that truly distinguish women from men, menstruation, and we're going to call it men get to be called that too. So men just take over everything. They control the entire vocabulary. There is not a single word that, well, I mean, where is woman menstruation? Shouldn't that be that? And so we definitely need to fix all these words. I mean, if we're going to fix amen, and we're all going to start praying with amen and a woman, then we definitely need to go in and we need to fix any English word that has the three letters M-A-N, M-E-N in any part of the word. If it has those three letters, that needs to be fixed so that our language can be truly tolerant, inclusive, and fair. Fairness is what we are after. So we definitely appreciate whoever the Yahoo was who opened the 117th Congress for pointing out that even words that come from other languages, such as Hebrew, that have nothing to do with gender, that mean nothing. There is nothing in amen that is gender. In fact, what amen means is, so it is. That's what amen means. It means so it is, or so let it be, or I agree, I concur, right? So it is. So you have to wonder, if amen means so it is, what does a woman mean? So amen means so it is. A woman, I guess, would mean, I shouldn't have to tell you. You should already know this. That's probably what a woman means. I think that's the original Hebrew for a woman. So very good. We had that pointed out to us this week at the opening of the 117th Congress. Just last night, big news hit. Donald Trump's phone call to the Georgia Secretary of State, trying to get them to re-examine the Georgia results and trying to find some way that they can decertify them. They'll send in new electors. I'm not sure exactly what the plan is at this point, but there's a hour-long phone call that you can hear on the Washington Post. I'm not sure how they got it. Somebody leaked it. Probably somebody from Georgia would be my guess, but it's hard to say. It's really hard to say, but the president calls the Georgia Secretary of State along with his attorney, and others were there. Many people were on the phone call. Most of the people on the phone call were attorneys, which is really disturbing. I know some of you were irritated at my comments and my take on Trump on the Freeborn podcast. of 2 days ago on Saturday, where we talked about voter fraud with Brett Carpenter, and we're kind of not really liking my take on Donald Trump. But I mean, do you need any more evidence than what we already have? And is this phone call not sufficient evidence that when it comes to politics, Donald Trump is in way over his head? Just because he's a political savant and he has a great he has obviously good intuition, and which is, I think, why he was able to win the presidency, and that is an accomplishment. There's no way to diminish that or take that away. That is impressive. But that you would want somebody, not a politician, do you understand all the ridiculous situations that he gets himself into? It's like I said a long time ago, Donald Trump's main problem is not some vast left-wing conspiracy out to get him, even though I think that the media has conspired with the Democratic Party in order to try to take down Trump. I think that pretty much everyone understands that. At least anyone who's not drank the Kool-Aid will realize. Even people who do not like Donald Trump and do not support him are aghast at how the media has been complicit in what should be, and is rightfully to be, the opposing party's place. There is nothing wrong with the Democrats opposing Donald Trump and looking for any legal way possible, even dirty politics. And I don't mean illegal politics, but politics are dirty in their underbelly. They all are. And that's how they're meant to be. That's how they must be played. And so for Democrats to use all dirty tricks possible to stop Donald Trump, to cause friction in his government, that is precisely how it is supposed to be. And when we have a Democrat president, Republicans, I want dirty politicians in that will use every trick possible to bring his program to a halt. That's how our government was designed to work. It built in brakes, right? Not just emergency brakes, but a constant drag is what the opposing party is supposed to be. But the news are supposed to be neutral observers. They're not supposed to be for either side, and they should be calling the balls and the strikes. You cannot have the umpire standing behind the plate wearing the pitcher's uniform or the batter's uniform. There's a reason why they dress in black, and that is because they're supposed to be for neither team. If they came out wearing clothes with the same colors as one of the teams, nobody would trust their calls, and the system would fall apart. Well, that's what the media has done. They are now in the tank for one side. It doesn't matter which side. And there was a time when they were in the tank for the Republican side. And you can go back and look at, for instance, Abraham Lincoln, and you can look at the yellow journalism of the time, or Teddy Roosevelt and other places where they were completely in the tank for the Republican side. That is not good for anybody. We do need somebody who is going to call things as they are, at least as much as possible. And the fact that news organizations have been pressured into being commentators as opposed to observers is almost entirely due to the market force on them. Nobody wants independent voice and media. I know that Republicans say that's what they want, but Republicans have left Fox News in droves because Fox News has dared to challenge the narrative of the Trumpers. Now, you might think that Fox News is now in the tank for the left. I find that highly debatable. I don't think that's what happened. We'll find out. As it stands right now, that's not the problem. The problem is you want them to root for one side, and you and the other people want them to root for another side. And there is basically no market for a news organization that isn't rooting and supporting one side. And that certainly is not helpful. Anyways, there is no vast left-wing conspiracy that is really Trump's problem. It does exist. I'm not saying that type of a conspiracy or desire. Of course, the opposing party is supposed to be conspiring against the president in so much as is legal. I'm not speaking of illegal activities, but their job is to oppose. And the media should stay out of that. But that's not really Trump's problem. Trump's problem is that he has committed serial seppuku since the time he was inaugurated and even before. He ritually disembowels himself on a regular basis. And this phone call is another example of that self-immolation that he puts himself through. What attorney stands in a room with his client and lets his client speak the way he did on the telephone? Not only what the media, I think, is mischaracterizing, because I listened to the phone call, and I think the media's way mischaracterizing what he said, right? That according to the media, he pressured them to do things. He threatened them if they didn't conjure up the necessary votes for him to win. And none of that is what took place if you listen to the phone call. All of that was standing. What attorney allows his client to make that phone call? You know somebody's going to record it. I mean, when are these politicians going to realize that they're not living in the 1950s anymore? Everybody has at least one device in their hand at all times capable of super high definition photos, video, and high quality audio. Everybody does. Every phone on the market can take better photos, better video, and record better audio than the professional equipment of 20 years ago. Everybody has it. And it's on all the time. It's not just when they think something important is happening. People are filming themselves choosing tomatoes at the supermarket. Everything is being recorded and everything is being loaded up to the cloud and is going to last forever. What attorney is allowing the President of the United States to make a phone call like that? And I'm not even talking about what the media is painting it to be. Let's assume that the media had never said anything and I was breaking this news to you. I would be telling you whatever attorney would allow such a phone call to happen should be disbarred, and you should never, ever seek his counsel on anything. What an idiot. Trump, even if he did nothing wrong, which as far as I can tell, there's nothing wrong said, there's no criminal activity done, he's not a mob boss like they're trying to paint him, he comes across like an idiot because much of the quote-unquote evidence he cites for wanting to overturn the Georgia election simply isn't true. This is a case of somebody believing his own followers. It's one thing for all the Trumpers to be completely sold on the narrative that the election was stolen. There was widespread voter fraud. There was targeted voter fraud. There was enormous quantities of voter fraud. It's one thing for the Trumpers to believe that. It's quite another thing for Donald Trump himself to believe the so-called evidence that he cited. Now, there may be some elements of the things he said that are true. There may very well have been tremendous amounts of voter fraud. That's not the debate, as I said in the podcast on voter fraud. I'm not arguing whether there is or is not voter fraud. In fact, I pretty much think there was quite a bit of voter fraud. I think there always is quite a bit of voter fraud. I actually think both sides engage in it to some extent. I think the Democrats are better at it. And I think that given that being the set of rules, the Republicans should get a lot better at it. I personally think that in the next election, out of the 330 million people who live in this country, or 360 million by that time who live in the country, we definitely need to have at least 600,000 of them vote in the next election. Maybe then our government will do something about addressing voter fraud. Trust me, if the Republicans got as good at voter fraud as the Democrats are, we would definitely have laws restricting voter fraud. We would have voter ID. We'd have a lot of things going on. A lot of people would be going to jail for committing voter fraud. Until then, basically, all sides must play dirty. It's kind of like the Tour de France. If you're not taking drugs in the Tour de France, you're not in the Tour de France. That's why when they took away the yellow jacket from Lance Armstrong, they didn't have anyone to give it to because nobody could pass the drug test. They were all on the drugs. They were all doing the transfusions. The entire peloton was dirty because you're not in it if you're not dirty. It's like they say, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. And that's kind of how our election system, because of how archaic it is, and that's what it caters to. And so, yeah, sure. Was there voter fraud? Almost certainly, I think there was voter fraud. But I have not found any evidence at all of actual fraud. There's evidence, if you want to call it that, there is strong evidence that there probably was voter fraud. That's not really evidence, but they like to call it that. But actual evidence to say this ballot is fraudulent, we can discard this ballot, we can overturn this ballot, I have not found not one single claim that withstands scrutiny. And I've actually tried to scrutinize them, and it's not to disprove them. I would love to be able to prove that there was enormous voter fraud and see the presidency ripped out of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's grasping little withered fingers at the last moment. I mean, that would be so satisfying, but it has to be true. Just going out on the street in some kind of a rally and chanting voter fraud, that's not evidence. And that's one of the arguments that Donald Trump gave in his phone call, that Georgia must have committed there must have been voter fraud in Georgia, because look at the rally sizes. We had thousands and thousands of people in our rally, and the opposition only had a couple hundreds. Sure, it looks suspicious, but that's not evidence. You can't overturn an election because you had a bigger rally than the other side. Rallies are it's just insane that I understand when somebody on the street corner says that, it's like, whatever, this is an nincompoop. They don't know what they're talking about. When the president of the United States is making his 11th hour phone call to convince the Secretary of State of Georgia to overturn their election, and that's his evidence that he had a bigger rally than the other side, and you're an attorney and you allow your client to make a fool of himself this way, I think the media completely misses the boat. And this is where you can see their blind rage. They're completely in the tank for the other side, and that the media ought to be reporting how clownish Donald Trump looks in this phone call, how impotent and absurd he looks in this phone call. Not what a mob boss he is, what a gangster he is. Are you kidding me? He looks like a decrepit old man pleading for his Viagra. That's what he sounds like in the phone call. Listen to it. You can get it on Washington Post. I know people are saying, well, you can only hear 4.5 minutes and they edit it. No. Washington Post published the entire phone call. I listened to it last night. I even recorded it in case I lost access to it or they took it off or whatever. They put it behind a paywall. I recorded it onto my computer so that I have a record of it. Donald Trump, the story of Donald Trump's phone call is two things. His attorneys are idiots, and he is going to go down on a sinking ship looking like a clown. That's the story of Donald Trump's phone call. Not that he's committing some crime and he's this mob boss who's or a dictator, this mob boss who's going to you're going to wake up with Joe Biden's going to wake up with his horse's head in his bed. That's not what that phone call is. And if I was his attorney, I would have risked being fired or being in front of a firing squad, and I would have hung up the phone on him and pleaded with my client not to make an idiot of himself. Let true, real attorneys, serious attorneys, deal with this. A president should not be calling the Secretary of State of Georgia on the phone to talk about this. If you think this is something that needs to be talked about, You do it where it's not going to be recorded, where you know it's not going to be recorded. I mean, I can see if this is his first day in office and you're like surprised. Oh, wait a minute. You mean in politics they play super dirty and they have no ethics and they're basically amoral? Hello? After 4 years, you still have to tell Donald Trump you can't trust anybody? These people are not your friends. They're not in awe of your celebrity, which is how Donald Trump has chosen his defense team. His defense team are celebrity lawyers. He's trying to convince the populace. You're not going to win an election fight, a post-election fight with celebrity, with the force of personality. That works for him with the Trumpers when he goes and does his rallies and he can talk about his plane and his hair and the pressure in his shower head and people swoon. But it doesn't work to persuade the opposing party. It doesn't work to persuade most independents. And it certainly doesn't work to persuade the courts. It's a bunch of nonsense. So that is the story of Donald Trump's phone call. And you should go and listen to it if you think that I've mischaracterized it. If you think that Donald Trump comes across looking gangster and tough and powerful. This is the president of the United States. Sitting 2 feet away from him or less is the nuclear football. And he's whining to the Secretary of State of a small state, smallish state, about rally size and about misinformation about the Dominion machines being carted off when they were not, that the parts in them are being swapped out. All of these wacky conspiracy theories, which I am pretty confident is not happening. Secretary of State, who is a Republican, with everyone else in the room who are also Republicans, saying, no, Mr. President, none of that is happening. You have your information wrong. How does the president make a phone call with information that is challenged so bluntly, not even hardly politely, by members of his own party? They're not even agreeing with anything he says. Nothing. How does the president of the United States make a phone call like that? You want to know why I've never liked Donald Trump? This is why I don't like Donald Trump. Same reason why I have a real problem with the Trumpers. Same reason I have a problem with fundamentalist evangelicals. They do not do the hard work of research. They do not question their assumptions with any level of objectivity. If something sounds right because it fits the narrative, it goes along with their gut feeling, they run with it. They do not question it. They do not look up any opposing research and say, has this been debunked? It's like all these fraud claims. They read the claims and they read the evidence for them. That's good. Absolutely. I do that also. But they don't say, I wonder if this is true. And then go try to find the very best opposing argument they can possibly find and really look it over and research it and see what they have to say. And then look for another one and another one, another one. Because if you want a fraud claim to stick in court and actually make a difference and have an outcome, it's going to have to withstand scrutiny. You're not going to go to the Supreme Court and only one side present its case. The other side is going to come with every possible argument they can make, and they're going to present their case. And if you don't know what that case is, if you're so misinformed that you're calling up the Georgia Secretary of State making claims that have been debunked very credibly many, many times by people all over the world, and you're still hanging on to those shreds of evidence, that's the best you got? You're going to be laughed out of court and laughed out of office and laughed out of history. Oh, Donald Trump. You can go on all day about him. I just saw recently, over the New Year's weekend, we saw a film that I liked very much. I don't always talk about movies, but I really liked this one. It's not a thoughtful movie. It's not a thought-provoking movie. It's just a fun movie called Greenland, a clean movie. I really like that about it. It had Gerard Butler in it, who I like. I don't think he's a great actor, maybe, but I think he's really good. I really like watching his films. Anyways, this one is Greenland. I think one of the reasons I liked it so much is because the entire movie, I'm expecting for them to make the case that the reason that a comet, and I know this is a spoiler alert, so if you haven't seen the movie and you don't like to know anything about a movie, you shouldn't listen to what I'm about to say. But I keep expecting for them to make the case that the reason that an enormous comet is hurling itself towards Earth and going to extinguish all of mankind has something to do with climate change. I mean, that wouldn't be the craziest thing you've ever heard them come up with. I mean, you can say, well, climate change has nothing to do with comets out in the universe and out in space. I mean, the reason why comets might be attracted to Earth isn't because of climate change. I mean, that's what a reasonable person would think. But this is Hollywood. They think everything is due to climate change. Right? They think they need to go live on Mars to get away from climate change. This is the geniuses that are running this place. Anyways, but they don't. I know that's a spoiler alert, and if I ruin the movie for you, I'm sorry, but spoiler alert, here it is. It has nothing to do with climate change. It is an end of world scenario movie about the destruction of the planet that has nothing, absolutely nothing to do with. In fact, they are driving SUVs all around, and there's nobody giving them a lecture. It was the most refreshing movie I have seen in a very, very long time. The main people are driving SUVs, they're burning gas, they're flying planes all over, and nobody's worried about the planet. Very refreshing. Kudos to Gerard Butler to being in the one movie, end of days movie, that is not a leftist lecture or a leftist sermon. So I really like that. What was interesting, and this is a little more of a spoiler alert here, be careful, but what was very interesting about the movie is the comet hits Earth. So there's no Bruce Willis in this movie. I feel like they could have saved a lot of people's lives in the movie if they could have gotten Bruce Willis in there. He would have flown up and landed on the comet and drilled in and detonated it and saved the whole world. There's no Bruce Willis there. There's no Robert Duvall from Deep Impact to save the planet. No, that's what I also like about it. There's nothing you can do. There's nobody out there trying to shoot missiles at this thing. They're not trying to hit the little pieces that are coming in with some type of iron shield. Nothing. It just shows how completely powerless humanity really is to the elements. When it really comes down to it, we have managed to harness our environment to a great deal. But when it really comes down to it, it doesn't take much to annihilate us. And there's not anything we can do about it. It's just like, it's what the movie looks like is humans look like a big pile of ants scurrying around trying not to get stomped on by somebody. And so I really like that about the movie also. So the comet comes, blows up the Earth, annihilates everybody who was not selected to be inside these special bunkers. So apparently, even though, and this is another thing, there's like no evil companies, there's no evil governments involved. I mean, everything bad about Hollywood, everything terrible about Hollywood films is absent in this movie. I just loved it. I love the movie. There's no big evil government. There's no big evil companies. There's no big evil villains. It's just survival in the worst case scenario. And the only way to survive is to get lucky. So they have this lottery And less than 1% of the world, I would guess maybe 1/10 of 1% of the world, for whatever reason, you don't know what exactly might be the criteria, but they were chosen to go inside these bunkers and try to survive what's the Holocaust, the cosmic Holocaust that's coming on the earth. And that's basically the premise of the movie. And those are the people that survive. So they come out at the end. The only it was a lot of it was unrealistic, but the only thing that was like completely blatantly unrealistic is they come out after 90 days. They're able to come out and the world basically just looks destroyed, right? Just like it's gotten burned all up, but there it is. And that's ridiculous. A comet that size would have brought about a mini ice age, or even a full-on ice age that would have lasted decades, minimum decades. But anyways, they come out and the world is destroyed, completely annihilated. There's anything that was not in these deep, deep underground bunkers is gone. And this amazing realization dawns on you as you look at this. Feminism, at that moment, is dead. Wokeness is dead. Social justice, dead. It all dies because there is no electricity left. There is no hydraulic power. There are no internal combustion engines left. There's nothing is left. The entire structure that we have built, the entire civilization we have built on Earth is gone. You want to survive, you're going to have to know how to find whatever animal might still be alive and be quick enough and strong enough to kill it and to be able to take it, drag it back, and hope that you have enough to feed your family so they don't starve to death that day. And that's going to take some men to do that. Not man-woman, not man/woman, just men. Now, you may think that women are going to go out and do this also. You're mistaken. The women are all pregnant. They're trying to repopulate the earth. You need people. So the women are all pregnant. They're not out chasing down whatever scraggly little animal happened to survive cosmic Holocaust. Very, very interesting. Civilization is the abstraction layer that we lay out, that we fabricate over reality. And we have, over the course of many thousands of years, have fabricated many, many layers of abstraction. You and I hardly ever actually interact with reality. This is why so many people have no connection to reality. This is why they're delusional. This is why so many people in the world, and I know you're looking around at everyone around you, it's not the people around you, it's you, it's me. We are not connected with reality. When's the last time you killed what you ate? Now, in America, hunters can probably say, well, right now I have a freezer chest full of venison that my son killed. So I'm eating something we killed. I have, and I don't know that I've ever eaten anything that I have killed or killed anything to eat. But even then, he went to some deer ranch where they practically put peanut butter on the muzzle of the gun and the deer comes up and licks it and you blow his brains out. That's not really reality whatsoever. Reality is that you got some scrawny little deer that's been living on thistles racing through the forest, and you're chasing him down with some homemade spear, and you're probably not going to get him. The actual success in that kind of hunting is extraordinarily low, and that's why they would generally live in places they could run them off of cliffs, because they had a lot better chance of doing that than actually spearing or shooting one with an arrow, even with our modern stuff. So when was the last time any of us had to actually kill anything to survive? Well, never. Because we have meat markets, and we have butcher shops, and we have convenience stores, and we have all these other layers of civilization that we have piled up on top of reality to abstract ourselves from it. So we don't have to deal with reality. We don't have to deal with the reality of heat or cold, because we have air conditioning and we have heating. We don't have to deal with the reality of sewage, which is a huge reality. We don't have to deal with the reality of water and running water. We have that right inside our home when we open up a tap. But that's not real. That's not reality. Reality is that you have to go to the stream and get water and hope that it's not water that has some form of bacteria in it that'll kill you or give you diarrhea and you'll die of dysentery. That's reality. None of us deal with these things. We can drink the water right out of our tap and we don't even think about it. So these are the layers that we've all built up on top of reality, and that is what we call civilization. Now, that's great. Civilization is wonderful. And I want us to keep building these layers up. I want to be as far removed from reality as possible. But with that comes a serious drawback, and that is we become more and more delusional and more full of ourselves. We think that we actually don't need anything because we need so much, which is the irony, right? We are served by so many and so much to the point where we cannot serve ourselves anymore. If I had to plant a crop to survive, I would perish. If I had to kill an animal every other day because there's no refrigeration, there's no way to store it, I don't know anything about preservation of meat, that would all have to be relearned. I would probably starve to death, and so would my family. I don't have any means of helping myself because I am helped every day by countless anonymous people and machines that I am utterly helpless and helped constantly, which makes me believe that I don't need any help. We are being helped by so many people so often, so much, so continuously that it has tricked us into thinking that we are the generation that doesn't need anybody. It's so ironic. It's so sad. And it's why people don't seek God, because they don't think they need anything. And the reason they don't think they need anything is because they need so much and are served by so many. Completely ironic and completely ungrateful, which is one of the hallmarks of the last time, according to the scriptures, right? According to the Bible, hallmark of the last time is that people are going to be ungrateful. Is there been any generation more ungrateful than ours? Sure, the one coming up. The next generation will be worse. Anyways, all of that I thought about as I watched that movie, Greenland. Loved the movie. Highly recommend the movie. Should go watch it. Tremendous film, I thought. And I'm not watching it for any type of scientific reality. I just loved the social, how would I put it? How unflinchingly they looked at the social dilemmas that would be presented. Although look, probably the budget was low because in my opinion, they really underdid it. The amount of panic, the gridlock that there would have been on the highways and in the streets would have cost billions of dollars to try to reproduce, I would assume. I mean, they're driving around on roads and they get a few roads that are clogged with some cars. I mean, that's just an average day of traffic in an average sized city. If the entire world thought that the world was going to end and they had to get somewhere to be safe, it'd be complete gridlock. Every road in the country would be a parking lot. People would be shooting and killing and plundering all over. So I assume that because of their budget constraints, they couldn't really do it justice in that way. So you got to kind of imagine that in your head, what the pandemonium would be in the world if any of that were even remotely to come to. I mean, look what happened when they thought here in Texas, those of you that are here in Texas, remember what happened when they thought there was going to be a hurricane again on the coast of Texas? The grocery stores were like bare. I mean, and this was just a hurricane like hours away that would never, everyone knew was never going to affect us. Gasoline stations were empty from people pumping up all the gas. So imagine if you actually thought a planet killer comet was going to hit the earth in 2 days. What the complete devastation and pandemonium would be. So they didn't get that right. But you can, but if you're interested in the movie the way I am because of the social inquiry that it's making into what the world would look like after that, I thought it was a really, really good movie. Okay, what else is in the news? Total deaths. Let's end with this. Total deaths for 2020 in America, in the U.S. Total deaths in the United States of America for 2020 was 2,835,533 deaths. That's how many deaths are reported in the U.S. for 2020. This is after a pandemic. Now, how many deaths were reported in 2019? Well, some people might think there should be a whole lot more, right? Because we've had a pandemic, so there should be 100,000 more, 200,000 more deaths than there was in 2019. There's no way to know how many there should be. I mean, they extrapolate data and they can project how many deaths there's going to be, and I suspect that the actual number of deaths is less than the estimates and the conservative estimates. We know they were less, right? We were supposed to have 2 million deaths from COVID alone, and we only had 2.8 million, 2.9 million total deaths in the country over the year. So it's way lower than the high estimates or scientific estimates that came out when the pandemic started. But if we compare it to 2019, just how many deaths there actually were as opposed to projections, the number of deaths in 2019 was 2,854,838. So there were roughly 800 more deaths in 2020 than in 2019. 800. Not bad. Not bad. Now, a lot of those deaths of 2020 are COVID related. I realize there's people that probably think that there are no COVID deaths because they don't even think it's a real thing. There are COVID deaths, and there's quite a few of them actually, even if we discount the ones that are overreported, that hospitals are incentivized to report them improperly and other things like that. We could do, even if we adjust for all that, there was a lot of deaths from COVID. So why do we have essentially, statistically, the exact same number of deaths from 2020 as we did in 2019? Well, because traffic fatalities are way, way down. I mean, COVID will go down as the biggest lifesaver in history. If we want to save people from untimely deaths, such as traffic accidents, well, a pandemic seems to be the ticket. A good pandemic. Sure, we're going to end up seeing a lot of people die, but overall, we will have saved lives. Isn't that what matters? Overall, you save lives? Isn't that pretty much the medical ethics of the past 7,000 years? The war justifications, the whole justification for government's unintended consequences, that overall, when you look at it as from the overall perspective, it's actually better. So we could say that we should be thankful for COVID-19. Some of you hearing me right now are alive today because of COVID-19. So maybe you should take it seriously when the scriptures tell us to give thanks for all things. All right. That is the show for today. In our generation, it is January 4th of 2021, and that is the news that I cared about. And I will talk to you next time.